You know, there are so many people, right, at the minute who are just in shock and not processing information properly. And it's going to take a few days to wear off. And some, let's say, normally reliable people to be like fair and analytical have run home to mama and are just on the defensive and have become ineffectual, lost their minds. It's like we're talking about some superstitious people here. Superstitious. And we're talking about, what, 1,000 innocents dead? Innocents, bloodletting, blood, magic, terror, body horror, rape, mutilation. It's like that's bad blood, that's blood magic. And that be a sacrifice to some pagan war god. It's like, whether they call it that, that's what that ends up being. It's like there are larger forces at play when you start to play games like that. And it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, it plays out. It really plays out. And this neurosis, this defensiveness, as to where people who'd already decided what they thought that conflict was about, they just ran home to mama and they, in essence, went and joined their camp immediately when they heard, oh, there's been some kind of breakthrough, as if Gaza is Ukraine. They don't know anything about the situation of what on the ground of the war. They've not followed it for years. They've not seen the same pattern over and over and over again. I've seen how many of these little wars break out, maybe 4 or 5 in my lifetime. It's like they don't really understand the gravity of the situation. Well, the gravity of the situation should start with something like, our generation have inherited a shitty mess. Inherited. Born into a struggle, born into a conflict that we've got no real stake in, because it was years before we were born. But suddenly, when we're born and we're educated, it's a matter of, this is who you are, and this is your enemy. You're a child. They teach you that. What chance you got? Say it's on all sides, but it's a funny old thing as to where you teach the Jewish kids that these guys mean to kill you if they get the chance to. It's like, well, how do we know that? Because they keep saying they're going to. It's not whether those who say it mean it, it's that they drill it into the minds of others. It's like the people in Palestine, you know, the residents of it's like, you have to call the fact that Hamas have had complete control of the kids for 15 years. It's like, what's left of those people? And then there's the judgment as to say that Hamas is a tyranny over its own people. But its own people haven't rebelled against it, or when they have, they've been taught a lesson and they've soon forgot about it. But it's a matter of, no, the tyranny that the people of Palestine need to overcome is their own government. And then they come to realise that the tyranny that they've been born to fight would be the force that best to help them rid themselves of the tyrannical terrorist masters. It's like the whole Middle East here sat there with big piles of money that they're spending on footballers, wages that could be spent on Gaza. It's like the deal that the people need is in the offing. But unfortunately for you, the maniacs who run your country are willing to fight to the last drop of your blood. And if every single one of you died and they were able to spark a larger conflict, they would say that it was a sacrifice they were willing to make. And people say to me, John, don't be silly. No one is that evil. I'm like, guess again. Oh, I know something of evil. Like, you bet your ass. It's like, their tactic rests upon hurt our civilian population. We're using them as shields. Hurt them, go on, hurt them, hurt them. Spill more blood. We'll play the victim, play the victim, play the victim. Our people who claim to be experts on this topic are just fucking brainwashed from birth as to who the good guys and who the bad guys are. And in the recent years where they've the Islamic movements have been able to infiltrate their movement into social justice. And people, well, yeah, well, you'll never admit that political Islam is a left-wing movement, even though it is. You know, it's communism with Allah. Communism with a plan. Communism with a plan. Communism with Allah. It's a left-wing movement. So no wonder they're able to infiltrate and play exactly the same games. They are the same people. With one strategy. Play the victim. Attack and provoke in an unimaginable blood lane. And then run away and play the victim. Because the punishment, the thing that they hope to achieve has already been achieved. Their mission objective in killing 1,000 civilians has been achieved. And from here, it's just a matter of, okay, what will we have left afterwards? Please spare us our poor city. And it's like 48 hours ago, you were dancing in the street and cheering your victory, and now you're saying, please, please have mercy on us. Made my last video talking about, has anyone in the media started to say, we demand the unconditional surrender of all HAMAS force? Like, we're going to roll in. And if you ambush us, we're gonna annihilate you. If you want to surrender, if you want to start walking out of the place with your weapons, and we'll sort the wheat from the chaff, but there's a few of you gonna die today. No calls for surrender from anyone. It's a matter of, if you were to surrender completely and beg for mercy, there might be some food for the people who are being displaced. Now, this is the thing with Gaza City. Please, people, sort your brains out there who's listening. Go and look how big Gaza is on a map, right? People say it's relatively small, but I'd say it's relatively big. You could fit the whole population of the world into Texas. This shit you hear, this Israel have cut off the power, and they've cut off the fuel, and they've cut off the food, and they've cut off the water. But yeah, that's to force them to move to where there's food, to where there's water, to where there's shelter. Move. You guys are going to have to live in a refugee camp or a camp city somewhere. Go and set up camp. It's a matter of, it's a weapon of war. It's like a weapon of war that's been employed by Hamas as well. They've been sending messages to towns as to say, telling people to flee because we're going to attack. It's designed to cause general chaos, make people flee, make the roads be full, make them into even more vulnerable targets. But if you cut off the water and you cut off the electricity and you cut off the food, you are giving extremely strong incentives for people to flee to where those things are available. Get out of the city, we're smashing the city. And it's like, you're going to have to be sweated, Palestinian people, because of the company you've kept. If you had anything about you, you'd have rebelled against Hamas. You'd have got rid of them. You'd have died fighting them. So I expect to get sweated. You're going to pay a price for keeping such poor company for so long. So that's what's going to happen. That's what's been pulled. It's like, we're going to make you pay. We're not letting anyone out of the country till we caught them all. You notice how the Egyptians will not open that border to let them into Egypt, across the Sinai. Why? Because all of those dickheads would escape and arrive in Egypt. They're not being allowed to escape. Why would you allow them to escape? They've escaped before. So there's no escape. So what's that? It's like, well, we've turned your population into a bag of shit for you to hold. And you knew this is what was going to happen when you did your bloodletting, when you deployed the blood magic. You knew that this is what it'd reap. You knew that this is the judgment that you'd get. And it's like, oh man, you're getting the judgment of Moses. So all they've got left for you. It's like the whole thing has been stripped down to the bone and mulled over for decades. And what are we left with? Oh yeah, we're gonna judge you like we're Moses. We're going to smash you to pieces. We're going to hit you bad. We're going to shatter your people for this. We're going to scatter you to the four winds. And it be right. Right, John? Oh, yeah. It's like this is all God shit. It's like killing all those people. You've invoked the magic. I'm telling you, blood magic, amazing. Go out and do a murder and see what happens. Suddenly, everybody, you know what I mean? You could be someone who just never gets any attention. No one ever really bothers with me. Go out and kill a lot of people, and now they're paying attention. Oh, now they're paying attention. It's amazing how effective it is. Oh, now you're all looking at me. It's the thing. It's the thing that happens. You don't have to. It's not something that's a social construct either. There's something to it. Everybody knows there's something to it. And then it's a matter of hurting people. Hurting people. Don't kill them. Hurt them. The people worried about the dead. The death toll. And it'd be a matter of, well, that's kind of released the spirits, that, hasn't it? That's the thing that people say no to. But it's like, what about the ones you've hurt? What about the ones you've left alive, forever broken by it? Like, who deals with them? What have you just created there? You set that person alive on fire, haven't you? There's a chance they might kill against you. Or everything that comes out of that person's lips in the future be, fuck those people who did this to us. Fuck those who allowed them to do it. Saying that, like, the old God is like returned. And what did it take? 1,000 civilians murdered, and the glorification of it on TikTok, where the murderers recorded their acts and glorified it and bragged about it and showed the world that they enjoyed what they were doing. They were having a bit of a fun day, doing what they would like to do, like a fair, like the Disneyland. It's like, having an entire theme park to yourself. That's what it was like for them. Tell you the thing to, didn't take me long to work this out. The surprise attack element of it, right? Because that's the question, isn't it? How did they get away with that? And it's a matter of, right, well, all those rockets would have given them an incredible amount of cover, radar cover, and also set off every alarm in Israel by way of cover. And then to have surgically taken out the guard towers with drones, and then very quickly opened up like 8 gaps in the fence, and then moved out in waves, understanding that the places that you were attacking were ostensibly in walking distance. You could get away with doing that by not using the internet to plan it, right? For those who understand anything of military history, and I'm not trying to be condescending here, the Tet Offensive, Vietnam, South Vietnam, it was a defeat for the Viet Cong. If you look at it in terms of men lost, they lost like 60,000 men in an assault. And they got thumped everywhere they fought, but they caused so much trouble and so much disruption and killed so many innocents and did so many atrocities and war crimes. Like, they go into the town and suddenly the spies for the North come out of circulation, come out of hiding with the list of people that they're like the VC to kill. The death lists appear, and we have a day of genocide. That's the Tet Offensive going on everywhere. The number of people they executed. It's like it was worth them losing all those men just to get their objectives completed. So they were able to pull that, the Viet Cong were able to pull that off. Surprise attack that was 100% effective as a surprise attack. They took over the airwaves for a few days, for a few weeks. Which is all they had in mind. They were able to plan that without the internet. They were able to plan that without radio interception, without tipping to anyone that there was something going on. And the way you do it is you sacrifice command and control, as they say. So you give out basic, not even written orders, spoken orders, and you do your business face to face. Or you use old-fashioned tradecraft. Handwritten code message signal. It's unstoppable. If your enemies are understanding that Hezbollah in the past had a great deal of success, and at Hamas in using the internet to coordinate attacks, make plans. So that's where the intelligence services in the world have become lazy and averse to real danger. They've started to monitor people's phones and emails, and they can unstoppably monitor phones and emails if you're to believe what they say about the Pegasus software developed by Mossad. So it's a matter of, wow, they've spent billions on that, but they can't stop me telling you what time and date to attack, where to be, and it's a matter of, what are the orders? You hit this town, and you do whatever you want, and you use your initiative and cause as much terror and destruction as you possibly can. And if you would prove what you're doing by taking video. Prove what you're doing. We've got no orders for you. Just head for that place. Do as much damage as you possibly can until you run out of ammunition, and then come home. And that's all your orders. So yeah, it's quite easy to plan an attack like that, because in its basic principles, given to those kind of trained thugs, that's just as much command as they need. They could do it in radio silence. The Vietnamese did. It's like they've adapted back to the old way of doing it, the analog way of doing it. The analog way of doing it is to already have your units organised, which is par for the course, obviously. They're likely people who hang out together all the time. And give them all just basic instructions. And then a timetable. And that's it. That's all you need. And at the same time, they've got themselves some drone operators. And there could be freelancers, people just in their own house deciding to do a bit. And then it's like unit to unit, keep your comms short range, use radios, short range, stick more or less together, advance at the same time, pull out at the same time. And that's it, that's all they needed. But to have planned it in silence, if you use the old method of just, this is the day, D-Day, and a timetable, and then really you leave the soldiers just to do whatever you want. You just unleash the Sardaukar, just do whatever you want. The object here is to cause as much outrage and anger as you possibly can, and then run for home, and then we'll play the victim. And that'll wind them up, won't it? We'll really wind them up. All these people in the world who we've already gained their support and sympathy will be astonished by what we do, and in being astonished, they'll act like it didn't happen. Or they'll blow it off as some kind of fair recompense, when it's absolutely not. How foolish have some people become? I'm still waiting for calls for Hamas to surrender from the international community. To surrender. Not that we support Israel or we support the Palestinians' right to exist. None of this shit. We demand Hamas's surrender. The international community and the Englishmen, the influencers, that's the message. When they see that their foreign support, in view of the atrocity they've committed, has now evaporated, and he's thinking twice about who they give their support to and who they give their money to, the time is right for there be a campaign to demand the unconditional surrender of Hamas. I'm just waiting to see it start. I'll start it off in my own corner. Just waiting for everyone else to join in. It's like, because the Israelis are not going to stop because the UN says, no, you can't do that to those poor people. The Israelis will say, we've given them plenty of notice to fucking run away. Out into the desert, out into the outskirts, out of the city. Get out of the city while we level it. It's a bad old break for them, but we're not exactly blowing them up in their own homes, are we? You've been told to run, and if you didn't run, sorry. Maybe you should have stood up against Hamas and died on that hill because it was right to rebel against them. And you didn't. And those who'd be best placed to help you remove that tyranny, you hate them even more. You indirectly blame them for the situation you find yourself in, even though they are not the same people who you've learned to hate. It's like if you don't know shit, you don't know about other people, you don't know about other people's lives, you don't know about what other people go through, you don't understand that everyone kind of has a struggle, don't understand what people do to get paid, don't understand. Isn't it so easy to say, oh, this place is a shithole? We can all agree upon that, can't we? Well, whose fault is it that it's a shithole? It's Israel's fault and those fucking terrible Jews. And then we get the new flavour of them who've been able to take something that takes... You've got to be emotionally mature and able to not pick a side for a long time, to pick a side, if you ask me. In this one, in that struggle, to pick a side. You got to be able to justify as to why you would say, kind of pick a side, as to say who's in the right here. And it's like, well, personally, it's like I'd say Israel are in the right, usually. But there's a lot of caveats to that, as there always will be, when there's so much hate and a visible enemy to strike out against. It's like, imagine these, you might imagine the LGBTQP brigade in this country. If they had an enemy that was unified, that they could strike out against, that had representatives in the street and stood on the fence, might they strike at them? When it's all been made about the one thing. It's like part of the kind of levels of safety you've got from dangerous rebellion in a society like ours is there is no singular enemy. There's no one singularly to blame. There's no person who could be targeted as to where if you killed them you'd fix it all. There's nothing like that. There's no tyrants to bring down. There's a few like local ones, but it's like, is it hardly worth the bother? It's like, well, yeah, it would be, but you can't even think it. You can't even think it. So rebellious or dangerous or potentially dangerous souls are all fighting their own fight. The day they all fight the same fight is a day that the whole thing comes down. Now, it's not going to happen in this country, although Extinction Rebellion and the like, they'd like to see that. They'd like to see all of the rebels under one umbrella, but it's like the only ones available to you are the dumb ones and the ones who couldn't punch their way out of a paper bag, unfortunately. You don't have the warrior caste available to you. They don't exist for you. They're not on your side, and they never will be. It's like, why? It's like, because to be effective as a fighter, you need to be a practical man. And there's nothing practical about living in fear of something that may or may not happen. So they don't. But living in fear of something that may or may not happen, that is not a factor if you're a Palestinian or an Israeli, is it? You just have to wait long enough and a fucking rocket's going to hit near enough to fuck you up. Bring the war to you. Give you a hell of a shock. Have you jumping out your chair. It's not so much getting killed by these rockets. It's getting constantly frightened to death by them, day after day, week after week. There's the thing, it's like, I've talked many times, the chap like Ricky, who's ended up in prison. He'll be out soon, I should think, for his hatred of Jews and the Israelis and his support for Hamas and the like. It's like, to him it just doesn't matter. Put it to him like, How would you feel like if you were living in a town where the neighbouring town was firing rockets at your fucking neighbourhood every day? Oh, there's been no rockets for the last week or two. I wonder what's going on. Oh, there's the rockets again. Down into the shelter. It's like, how would you feel about that? You'd be like, if it was Bury Council firing at Middleton, you'd be like, fuck you, Bury Council, and those who work for you. But it's a matter of, oh, well, they deserve it, the Jews. They deserve it. Yeah, for the centuries, okay, so is that the game we're playing? This terrible, when you start to apply collectivism, right, which is a modern thing, really is, to be thinking like that historically. It's in this moment as to where, if you're going to take the Jew thing back to antiquity and you're going to take the Arab thing back to antiquity, it's like, we're not solving this problem between us, me and you. We're generating hate because it's absurd. If you're going to use the cover of history and you're going to use the cover of religion and prophecy to kind of enable your war position, it's like, we're going to be here a long time because there's none of it based in reality. The thing that's based in reality is that, oh, incoming, air raid warning. That's real. Like, oh, we've been bombed by the Israeli Air Force. Oh, right, well, those people you voted for, they've been firing rockets at people like you. And you're not doing anything about them, are you? So when, because they say Hamas are the government, they're the council, they're the central government, they're the government. It's like when the government next door plays the same kind of games, it becomes a big problem. So I mean, they always talk about one-sided. It's like, no, it's always one-sided the wrong way. It's like, I don't know if I don't think there's anyone around, mainstream media-wise, or who are really interested in teaching anyone about Israel. There's been a few good series made in the last, 5-6 years that give a taste of what the stakes are for the Israelis. What the stakes are, how dangerous the situation they find themselves in is. And it's like, every single one of them been proven true by what happened in the last 5 days. All of them. Whether it be the Delta Force, whether it be Tehran, all these Israeli-made sort of shows are are around that you can go away and you can watch. The one with Borat in about the spy. It's like they're playing for keeps. It's like they have to defend themselves. They've got no choice. They're born into a struggle. And if the day they say, oh, let's lay down our arms and let's not belligerently defend ourselves, let's not, would be the day that they're wiped out. Because there is no deal to be done. The power of the tyrants in the Middle East depends on Israel. Being the scapegoat, being the ancient enemy, and that's what keeps the tyrants in power. They utilize and use Israel. It's like a kind of a magic enemy, a superstitious enemy, a historical enemy, a cultural enemy, and easy, a cop-out. Blaming the Jews for everything is a lot like blaming everything on climate change. If you're capable of blaming everything on climate change, you're also capable of blaming everything on Jews. And it'd be easy. Because if you look at what the social justice people have done with the war, where they've simplified it down to white man, black man, Jews as, highly privileged rich white people who are racist against the brown Palestinians. If you can turn it into that and then invite that horde of fucking fools to become your voice and those who fight for you in the wider world, that's like turkeys voting for Christmas. Although I did hear a clip of Jeremy Corbyn referring to Hamas as right-wing extremists. I'm like, does he really think that's true? Does he really think that Hamas are ultra-right-wing extremists? Because that kind of faulty thinking, because they're actually left-wing extremists. Absolutely so. Absolutely so, they're left-wing extremists. Like, you think they're right-wing extremists? Like, no, they're creatures of the left. They play the same games as you. Just enjoy it. If a guy like Corbyn, who's been actually an ineffectual player for all of his political career in the Palestinian problem, he's never got any closer to any kind of peaceful solution, but people would applaud him for his efforts to be some kind of voice for the Palestinians. Same with George Galloway. George Galloway most of the time makes some sense. You get him on anything about Israel or Palestine, boom, just instantly becomes a fucking brainless idiot who starts to talk about the poor children. The poor women and children. The poor women and children. And that's, oh, so you just fall for the trick every time. The same old trick. What about the dogs? What about the pets? What about the gerbils? What about the snakes? What about the men? What about the old men? What about the young boys? It's like that's the trick that's made available. That's the trick they play. We talk about, I'm just listening there to Owen Jones running his mouth about how evil the Jews are, how evil Israel is. And it goes, he doesn't talk about Hamas. Where people are addressing, we're going to deal with Hamas, we're going to sort these guys out. He, in his own inimitable style, which is all he's based his career on, he then changes that to be about Palestinians. These people are calling for genocide. It's like, no, they're calling for the extermination of the members of an organisation, which makes sense even. But you choose to change it to Palestinians. And then when we talk about Hamas dead, we change it to poor women and children. And it goes round and round in circles. So when they're under attack, the poor women and children. So it's like, mate, the gay tricks you use to deflect blame in this situation are completely inappropriate. But obviously you'd never tell him, you'd never be able to tell him that. You could bring him heads or something. Send him a head. Send him one of them kids' heads. And he still wouldn't accept it. No, how do we know that this is a Jewish kid's head? This could be a Palestinian head. How are we to know? Would be the conclusion he'd take it to. You couldn't move him an inch on his position. He's completely brainwashed. And he feels it, doesn't he? Got a fire in his belly over thinking about the poor children. The poor children. It's like if the poor children works on you, you're done. They're just people around you, your enemies who like to take from you what you've got. They'll be nudging each other on the arm and say, we've got this guy. He says, well, we've got him, he's going to join us. Oh, yeah? Yeah, just keep bringing up the poor children. It works on him like a treat. Every time you bring up the poor children, he puts his hand in his pocket. Just thinking of the poor children. Pass it on, tell everybody. We'll have him mouthing off in the local papers next.